Good morning. Guess people have stopped filtering in. It's a couple of questions that I'll pose first of all. They're kind of rhetorical questions. The first one is, why is SQL so darned hard to use, and what can we do to fix it? And the second is, why can't we have a common tool to design databases and design queries every place that you want to do it? Because you find all over the place you're wanting to do SQL, and it would be nice to have a common way of doing that. Now, these are questions I've been asking myself actually quite a long time. I've been involved in relational databases since about 1984. Actually, since first time I actually heard about it was I heard Chris Dates speak in England in 1973. But it took me about 10 years to actually get myself involved in it. And so since about 84, I've been involved in relational databases, first of all in research, then for a long time with DB2 and IBM, and more recently SQL Server in Microsoft. But all that time, I was really part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And about, I guess it's about 6 months ago, I switched sides and joined the Visual Studio team working on visual database tools. My name's Frank Pellow. I'm a program manager on that team. So let's go back and maybe examine why SQL is so hard to use to start with. First of all, it's supposedly based on it is based on a relational model. But it breaks the relational model right from the get-go. It did all kinds of things you're not supposed to do with the relational model. It supported nulls. You'll hear Chris Date if you've heard go on about that quite a lot. It allowed you to have tables without primary keys. It allowed you to have tables with multiple primary keys. There's a very strong definition of what a domain is in the relational model, and it broke all those rules. So that was right from the start. It was a little bit of trouble. The second thing is that SQL was really a rather pragmatic research project done in Almaden Research in IBM in the late 1970s, written in PL1. It was intended to let you support simple queries, simple update, insert, delete, against a rather small database. And that's how it got started. People picked up on that and expanded it far beyond what anyone expected. It's really been the victim of its own success. And as it's become the de facto way of getting languages to get at relational databases, it's been augmented time and time again. Programming language constructs. That wasn't in the original thing at all. Triggers. User-defined functions, user-defined procedures. More recently, object extensions. Recursion. All kinds of things that just weren't envisioned originally for SQL. So it's kind of grown and grown and grown and grown, getting more complicated all the time. And it's really been a language designed by committee, or several committees. I've been a member of the Canadian Standards Committee working on SQL, the US Committee working on SQL, and the International Standards Organization. And I've met with several people in other companies to cooperate to do that, and universities. And it really is a language designed by committee, which is not the best way to design a language. And although we have an SQL standard, one of our problems is all the vendors extend it, tweak it, do things to it, implement kind of the core part of it, but then go and do funny things to it. And really the roots and base technology of SQL are really ancient. It goes back 30 or 25 or 30 years is where a lot of the stuff came from. So it's old. So that's kind of the reason we got our problems. What can we do about it? Well, I think the way to do it is to have these tools on the front end that ignore some of the idiosyncrasies and try to mask them as much as they possibly can, but at the same time to give you all the power to get at those things if you want them. Our goal in the Visual Database Tools team is we want to provide the full power of SQL. We want to use modern GUI technology. We want to access multiple backends, and we want to put this in every appropriate Microsoft product that has to get at SQL. So that's kind of our mission. Now, Got a sad moment here now. My predecessor, Tim Broadhacker, would have been here today, probably talking. He was really the person that kind of pulled a lot of the stuff together. He died early this year, actually leaving four very small young daughters, and very sad. But I'm here to try to substitute for him. But he left us quite a vision, and we're going to deliver on that vision, believe me. The team's very cohesive, and we feel very strongly that we'd like to do as much as we can in Tim's memory. And Tim left us with a saying that has kind of become our credo, and that is, it's our job to muck with the user's SQL. And so we're going to do that. Let's get on. All right, here's our ubiquitous slide that we all have. Well, this slide is kind of a runtime slide, as one of my colleagues pointed out, and we're a design time tool. So at runtime, where do we show up? Well, we produce things that show up obviously in the data tier, because you're defining SQL. You can define scripts and things to run on the middle tier, and as well in the client tier. So we're really on all those three places at runtime. At design time, we're a client tool. So at design time, we're in the client tier. Our name is rather obvious: visual, database, you can see the list of databases, and tools. And here's a list of the various tools we support. I'll go into all of these tools later in demonstrations. I put this slide together. We're, of course, at the center of it. And we ship in several different, we don't ship as a separate product. We ship in these various places I'm going to show you. Now, we ship in SQL Server. You'll see I've also got Oracle and other up there. We don't actually ship in Oracle or other yet, but we do support them as back-end, so I thought we should show them as part of something our product supports. But our product actually ships in SQL Server. It also ships in Visual Studio. You can just do so much with the back-end. If you're really developing applications, you've got to write other code, and so it seems appropriate that we should be integrated into Visual Studio as well, so you can use things like Visual Source Safe to save the work you've done, and get at queries through Visual Basic or Visual C++. And then this last one might surprise you. We are also in Microsoft Office. And why are we in Microsoft Office? Well, Access is probably the most successful database out there. And traditionally in Office, Microsoft supported the JET engine. We're moving to also provide the alternative of supporting what used to be called MSDE. I think it's now being called, let's see, SQL Desktop Engine. Sorry, it's changed. It was SQL Runtime a little while ago, so I thank you for letting me know that. Anyway, so we are very much a part of supporting that desktop engine in Access. So our tools are ubiquitous. We're available. Here's the first versions of all the products that we shipped in for your information. Let's take a look at the various tools now. First of all, I'll go through and just give a slide on each one, and then later on I'll be demonstrating most of them. So, Database Designer. I'd like to point out a couple of things here with the Database Designer. So, essentially, I like to think of this, another bit of a story. I just became a grandfather, and I'm very much thinking of children's toys and things these days. So I really do think of this as playing with building blocks. It's really a lot of fun. You kind of put the building blocks together, move them around. And so this is really quite simple. You put building blocks, which represent tables, on your diagram, and you join them up. And on this particular diagram, you can indicate the various tables have key fields. So this has got a dual key field here, the keys in the others. This one does have key at all. And there's relationships between the table. So here's a relationship between the author ID here and in the title author table and the authors table. We have the ability to show any or all of the tables that are in your database in a diagram, and we can put a given table can show up in several diagrams. You can decide whether or not you want to see, there's various options we provide. So when you'll see later on, we can select from lists of tables to drag them onto the diagramming surface. And you can either opt to see system tables or opt to not see system tables. A lot of options like that available to tailor a thing for you. As I say, the other thing you want to do is you want to design new tables, and you can design new tables right on the diagram surface as well. Another very useful capability we have is what we call our genius edits, because SQL will let you support some changes to objects, but we go beyond that and do the background work in order to do some of the things that SQL itself doesn't support, or SQL in certain products backends doesn't support. For instance, in certain backends, believe it or not, you can't do an alter table, delete column. Well, in every backend we support, we do the mechanism to let you delete columns from tables. Some other things that SQL doesn't let you do is reorder the columns of a table. We support that. It's really, okay, another capability would be altering an index. There's really no alter index statement, so we let you go in and alter indexes. It's difficult to do anything with defaults or with null values of existing tables, so we can let you alter the defaults and the null values. So extending SQL in ways that are practical that you would like to do. That's the database designer. Query design suite. And we've got, why do I call this a query design suite? Well, there's several kinds of queries that we can support, and they show up in different places. We've got a view designer. We've got, with SQL Server 2000, they've now introduced a couple of other tabular things, one being an inline function. So we have an inline function designer, and that's an inline function which you can then, is a term for a function which returns a table and then can be used just like a table anywhere in SQL. So we'll help you design those. A DML designer, which lets you design several different kinds of SQL statements. Up in this area here, we formulate either a table expression, which involves several tables, or a single table gets dragged into this surface at the top. And then with that table expression, you can either select from it, you can create a new table using it, or you can insert data from that into another table. If there's a single table up here, you can do more. You can do an insert statement, an update statement, or a delete statement using that table. And the other capability is a stored procedure designer, a graphical stored procedure designer. So that's the suite has the four basic kinds of designers in there. Now, there's a lot more going on here than there was in the previous building block approach. And I think the analogy here is a Lego set, because you've got, as you see a little bit later on, what I'm doing is I'm doing things in one of these panes, and it's impacting what's going on in the other. So I think of a Lego set with gears, which, so if you do something here, the gear turns and you affect something in one of the other panes. So let's look at each of these panes in turn. So the first thing we've got is this diagram pane, which I've been referring to, where you drag tables and onto the surface, and then you join them this way. You can do more. There's a toolbar up here at the top, which has various tools you'd like to use for common things like group by, where you're grouping by the rows of a table, and it kind of alters your query to do to group the rows if you select this group by. This area here is a grid pane, and in the grid pane, you can do additional things that go beyond what you can kind of select up here. For instance, there's a criteria column, and that can be used to filter the rows that you're going to show. There's an order column where you can order the rows of a table. You can, over here, you can adjust the sequence of the rows in this section here. There's a lot of other capabilities in there, of which I'm not going to go into detail right now. The SQL pane. While you're modifying these top two panes, we generate the SQL down here. It also works the other way. If you decide that you actually want to key the SQL, you can key the SQL, come up, we can verify the SQL against the back end to make sure it's valid, and we can actually run the SQL. But once we've verified the SQL, we'll populate the grid pane and the diagram pane to reflect what it is you've done. The last pane is a results pane. And this is after you've run a select statement. We'll populate this area down here, and you can actually go in and make changes. If it's an updatable result set, you can do adds, updates, and deletes down in this section here just by modifying the data in this pane. Database Explorer, another one of our tools. This shows up in various hosts, and we do this in cooperation with our various hosts. And it kind of has the look and feel of our host. This particular one is DataView Explorer as it shows up in Visual Studio. And it can be used to, it lists various objects. You can see here I've got views, stored procedures. Within the view, you can see I've listed, within title view there, I don't know how many of you can, the people in the back might be able to see it. But within views, we list all the columns. Within store procedures, we'll list the columns and the return value of that store procedure. If a table, we'll list the columns and the triggers on that table. Essentially discover all the objects that are relevant in the particular database that you're looking at. The Project Explorer is in Visual Studio only. Sorry to me. Visual Studio structure is such, with the people aren't familiar with it, you divide everything into projects. So there's a project. You can group your projects into solutions, which is a higher levels construct. Within a project, the things that are interesting to us are connections. And within connections, there's a script, and there's a query. So we have scripts and queries, and these are all client-side things. So the earlier things we talked about, the views, the tables, and everything, are server-side. This is where you define some of the components of your application that will reside on the client. And there's a couple of interesting commands in this drop-down. The first one's add to source control, and this is where you can add your script or your query to have it controlled by Visual Source Safe. Whoops, went too fast, go back. Sorry. The other thing that's interesting here is you can actually, the other commands like the design command, you can actually go in, and from this is where you can actually go in and design queries, modify existing queries. You can actually run queries from here. So that's the Project Explorer. The next thing we're going to look at is the script generator. So if you've been in designing a table, doing a lot of work, and get to kind of the end, you've got a couple of alternatives. After you're designing tables or designing databases, you can either save all the changes you've made to the database, or you can actually go and generate these into a script, or you can do both. But a case where sometimes it would be good to just generate a script and not save it to the database would be, for instance, if you were not a database administrator, you had tight database control in your organization, you're trying to do what-if kinds of things. So you in your experiment, you do some design, you save it away to a script, and then you can send it off to your database administrator, and he can actually put it in. That's a nice alternative. You can do this for changes. It's also good to maybe just log what changes you've made, keep track of them. You do it for changes, or you can do it if you've just got to start it from scratch. You can also generate scripts that do the complete new job of new tables you've designed. We have a script editor, and this is interesting. And one of the features I really like in our script editor, you can see down at the bottom here, I've selected a select statement, and then I use the misnamed, I think it will be renamed in the next release, edit SQL. what I really mean, edit to me has the connotation of going in and using an editor. In this case, we're kind of designing it using something graphic. So I actually want to go in and, having selected this statement, I then push the edit SQL command, and what comes up is the query builder for that particular select statement that I just selected. And I can go in and modify it with my DML designer. So that shows how the script editor interacts with the DML designer. And you can go through, and for all of the statements that you've got in your script, you can drop into the DML designer and design interesting SQL statements, plug them into your script this way. You don't have to key them the old tedious way. The last particular component I'm going to talk about is the routine debugger. And this is just the same debugger that is used in Visual Studio for things like Visual Basic and Visual C++. And we've just hooked into it. And there's some of the things we'll point out here. So it's really quite, if you're used to that debugger, you'll have no problem here. So here's the current position in your routine. You can set various breakpoints. There's a breakpoint shown to the left there. You've got various commands up here at the top. This is the start command. This is another way of inserting breakpoints. You can go down and click there is one way, or you can insert it with this little hand. There's a watch region, which lets you define a set of variables which you're going to trace through and see the content of those variables as you proceed through your script. And what got talked about yesterday in one of the sessions, this didn't used to be plugged into the query analyzer within SQL Server itself, and it is now also available in the query analyzer. So I think to some degree, with the last version of SQL Server 7, we were kind of the only way to do this. It's much more integrated now into Query Analyzer, and I guess there's perhaps less need for us to do it, but I'm happy to see, again, a tool being distributed every place it's needed. It is in Query Analyzer in SQL Server 2000. Not in 7. If you're in 7, you've got to use our tool to get at it. So I'm going to look now at each of our hosts in some detail and show what capabilities, because all of our capabilities don't show up in all of our hosts. The ones that they show up the most in is Visual Studio. And these little tick marks show what's provided. So you can see, of course, we support SQL Server, everything. Oracle, we don't have debugging of procedures or triggers in Oracle. Generic is essentially some level of ODBC and OLEDB, which is well documented, and anybody that has those kinds of providers, we support them. But it's the query designers and the database explorer that we support in those back ends. A lot of these other components we don't support in a generic way. You might say, hey, that Oracle list is just about as good as a SQL Server list. Well, yes. We do support Oracle and SQL Server. We support them well. But as George Orwell said in Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And so I think the SQL Server is a little more equal here. So having done that, let's move on now and give some demos. I have to adjust some equipment. I've got one laptop with old things on it because they wouldn't let me demonstrate the new versions of Visual Studio and Office. So I've got the old versions of them on one laptop, and then I've got the new version of SQL Server on another laptop. So we'll shift in here. And ship machines, I think this is 3. Right. So here I've got Visual Studio, and oh, my mouse is wrong mouse. There we go. So let's take a look here. We've got, so I mentioned we've got the data view, which is the thing that we provide, where you can go down and expand upon pubs, for instance, and take a look at what's in pubs. What's going on here? Have I still got the wrong mouse? Oh, it did. It's just a little slow. Sorry about that. This is the old departmental laptop they brought me, sent to me with the conference too. So I think it's a 286 or something in here. So let's expand a bit here. Let's look at tables, and see some interesting tables here. Let's take a look at, for instance, at the employee table. And there's all the columns in the employee table. And down below, here's a trigger on the employee table, as I mentioned. Let's expand this down as well. This is kind of going to get a bit more territory here. Go look at some store procedures. Let's take a look. What store procedures have I got? Here's a store procedure. Our rep Q3, I guess that's report query 3, which has got the columns again, and then here's the result coming back of that particular query. Here's the parameters going in, and here's the columns coming back. Sorry for that mismatch. We've reordered these because in the latest release, because we felt you did the parameters first, then did the columns coming back. So I'm a little bit caught up on my old. The old stuff is not quite familiar to me as the new stuff. Okay, so we've done a bit of exploring. Let's actually do something a little more exciting and design some diagrams. So I'll close these. A database diagram. I'm going to create a new diagram. And I'm going to expand my table again. I'm going to drag a table onto the diagram. And I'll drag the jobs table. So you go like this, drag it on. There it is. Now, you can do various things with that. Right now, I'm just showing the columns in there. I can go down and say column properties, and that gets me a much bigger list of all the various properties on this column. I'm going to add a new column. So let's rate the jobs. Maybe give something like prestige in the job. Tab over. I get a drop down here. Let's say I'm going to make this a varchar 20. Keep scrolling down. There it is. It'll show up somewhere. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to allow nulls, which is what this column is right here. Because it's a new column, I'm altering the tables. This will give it null values in the rest of the columns. That looks good. So, but you might have noticed I was a little uncomfortable doing the varchar drop-down and then going over and keying in the 20. That's not the way. I'm used to just keying in varchar 20. So if I'm an SQL person who's kind of steeped in this stuff, yes, someone who's a novice would appreciate this. But if I want to do things a little faster, I can tailor this thing. So let's look at the drop-down, and I've got something here where I can actually modify. This is a custom view, and I can modify the custom view, and I can select various columns to go into a custom view. And so there's a custom view I could opt for, which has got column name, condensed type, and nullable. That sounds like kind of something I might be a little more comfortable with. So let's opt to go for the custom view, and there it is. And now I could have just gone in and typed varchar 20. I wouldn't have had to fool around the way I did. Okay, let's get some more. Let's go back. Now I'm going to drag some more tables on here, and I think I want to go back to just have the column names. And I'll drag another table onto here. Well, actually, there's another feature that's kind of nice. It says add related tables. So I'm going to, any table that has a direct relationship with jobs, if I do that, it'll also get dragged to the surface. And here's employee got to drag to the surface. So let's move employee out here and see what this is all about. Now, see a couple of lines here. These show relationships. So this is a kind of a standard relationship between jobs and so between job ID here and job ID here. Now, what is this relationship all about? And it's a foreign key relationship, employee manager ID, between the employee table and the employee table. So this is a self-join where everybody who is a manager, so there's a manager ID, also has to be an employee. So that's what that's all about. And you'll see a little later on we're going to use that in an example. Okay, let's drag some more tables onto here. Let's see which ones I want to drag. Yes, okay. Let's get authors, and I can kind of do the control-click thing, title, author, and titles. Drag them on. I get a warning here. The titles table is full text indexed, and in SQL Server 7, we have a restriction that we don't let you alter. That's our restriction, not SQL Server 7's. That we don't let you alter any tables that are full text indexed. So we put up this warning. Now, with SQL Server 2000, we've done a better job. You know, we'll let you do some alters to the table. We no longer put up the warning. Let's drag these around, try to make my diagram look a little better. Actually, you have to select them one at a time or they'll go as a group. So I guess that looks a little better, slightly. That looks a little confusing. Let's move author up there. That looks a little better now. Also, it's way off the surface. So let's, now you're going to have trouble seeing it, but I'm going to reduce this down to say 75%. So I can see everything. Okay, I'm going to put a new table on here. Show you to create that, and I'm going to do one. Let's do a table. So I'll go up here. I can either right-click and get a new table, or I can go up to the toolbar and get it. I'm going to do a table, and I'm going to call it something like book tours. And I have some columns. See, I've got the expanded view. I'm going to go back to the custom view. I'll expand this a bit. Oops, what did I do there? I guess I'm in the wrong. I find myself in the wrong column here. That's not nullable. That's not nullable. That's nullable. And something like instructions. Make that a text column. Whoops, I got. And okay, so I've got my table now. Let's go back and just have a column view of it too. And let's do a join between this table and this table. So the way you join tables is you select it in this, you drag it up to the particular column in there, and I've now got a relationship. It asks me about the relationship. By default, it assumes the relationship that I just got, and I can just accept that default relationship. So I've now got a relationship between those two tables. Let's drag some more tables on here, just to really clutter things up. Let's do that one, whoops, that one through that one. But there's a tool that will help me here, and it's an arrange tables. So I do that, reduce it down to say 50%, and to show you that it has kind of organized it in a way that I could then use it. And quite often what people do with these things is they cut them out and paste them on walls and things like that. So there's another tool here which I can do text annotation. And I can call this something like my important diagram. If I could, I actually don't know that. I've never tried. Does anyone here know? Can you copy the diagram surface? Like I know what I could do is take a snapshot, a screen snapshot, and use the draw capability and then import that into a Word document. That's one way I know I could do it. We don't have an explicit way of doing it. So using the clipboard, I know you can manage it and things like that, or the print screen capability that you can do with anything. But we actually have a so actually take it and add it to a diagram. Does anyone know? No. Oh, you can print it. But what the question was, can I actually take it and add it to as an object to a diagram? I know one way of doing it, and that's to use the draw capability and then create a bitmap and put it in that way. But I don't know if there's any other way. I'll write that down as a question. Okay, thanks very much, Joe. Okay, I'm going to save this diagram now. And you notice that, okay, so here I am. Yes, I'm going to say, yes, I would like to save that. And it's asking me for a name, and I'm going to call it my important diagram. And you notice it didn't just say the diagram, but it's kept track of any of the tables that I altered during this session. And it's asking me, do I actually want to apply those changes to the back end? In this case, yes, I'm going to do that. Okay, close the data view, or no, actually reduce the size of the data view. Where's the line here between them? There it is. Let's look at the Project Explorer a bit. Go down, expand upon a project, expand upon a connection, and I'm going to right-click on connection and say I want to add an item. What items do I want to add? Well, I'm going to add a query. I'm going to give it a name. Let's say titles by author. Whoops, I can't spell. Well, I can't type is what I can't. I can't do either, actually. Open it. Oh, I already have one by that name. Yeah, well, let's replace it. Yes. So I'm going to have a new title by author. And I guess if I'm going to have title by author, maybe I should opt for. Now I've got my common thing here with the three panes. I'm going to get rid of the results pane for right now to make my diagram a little bit more usable. At any point in time, these are toggle switches, so I can toggle them on and off and add and remove the panes. Okay, so let's get some tables onto here. So I'm going to get authors, title author, and titles. Now, notice the way it's kind of used the relationship it already knows about in the database to make the joins here. But actually, this is probably the way you want it to look. You've got, maybe we want to look the other way. You can just move these around any way you want, see? And this is probably the right picture. You've got author going to author there and title going to title there. You come up here and you select the columns you want. So I would like last name and first name, and as I tick them, they go down into the grid pane. I would like, from this one, I'd like the title. Maybe I'll put the author ID in there as well, and maybe the title ID. Now what you can do is you can go down and reorder these. So if I wanted to move this one, say, up to the top, I'd select this, move it up like this. That looks like a good arrangement. I can sort them, so so I'm going to sort ascending here on the author ID. So there's my SQL that got formed. I can go up here and verify it to make sure it's okay against the back end. Verified. Then I can run it. And when I run it, I get the result pane. Let's close these other windows so I can look. There it is, the result pane with the results there. I can now go and close this, and it asks me if I want to save this. Yes, I do. Now, when I go back to the Project Explorer, I've got my titles by author. I can right-click on it, and one of the things I can say is Open. And that just runs it. So that's just a way of just running it. Once you've got these queries here, you can just open them and run them. This case now, it's run it, and because it was running it, it didn't put up the SQL pane and the other pane. They're always available if I want to see them. So it defaults to certain panes, but you can get the ones you want. Now, I had hoped to show a debug demo, but I'm running a little late. So I think I'm going to skip that demo. We did see it a little bit earlier, and if I have time at the end, I can go back and do it, or you can catch me any time after the session, and I can certainly show you how to use the debugger. So let's close out of here. And flip back to here. So we've seen that demo except for the store procedure debugger. Now, our next host, Access 2000. Now, a lot of people that I talk to about Access, and I say, well, we're used in Access. They say, well, what's this Access? Access has got this JET database. What's it doing with SQL Server? So it's a big mystery to a lot of people that Access actually supports SQL Server, sometimes called MSDE or SQL Desktop engine, as a back end. And to verify that, I went off to a bookstore the first day I got here and found the biggest, thickest books I could find on Access 2000. And I found 3 of them, and I just looked at them. The first one was about a 1,300-page book called Access 2000, the complete reference. I found absolutely no reference to MSDE in it or any of our tools. The next one I found was Microsoft Access 2000 Bible. Well, there were 30 pages out of 1,500, so it was 2% of the book was devoted to this. And it was definitely pasted in, it wasn't integrated, so when you were working on one aspect of Access, it didn't say, oh, by the way, if you are doing a design of a form and with the SQL backend, you would do this. It just did the design of forms, assuming you're using the JET backend, and it was just assumed throughout the whole book that you were using JET. And then the other book I looked at was Special Edition using Access 2000, 1,230 pages. In that case, we got 4%, so we're getting better as things go on. But again, we weren't integrated at all. So part of our job in the next release of Office, and in cooperation with the tools we build, is to make it very much better integrated into Office. And that's part of our mission as well. Now, I can just tell you that's our mission. I can't actually show you any of that. I can tell you that work's going on. But what I have to demonstrate is Access 2000 against SQL Server 7, because that's all that's been announced so far. I really do think it's important to get at Access. Access is by far the biggest database out there in terms of installed base. And it's no accident. Access is easy to use, and we can learn an awful lot from the GUIs and things that are available in Access. And we are. I look upon this, again, I'm going to go back to my daughter in this case, the mother of my new granddaughter. And when she was a little child, we started her, I'm an avid cyclist, and we started her off on training wheels. She was about 3 years old. She went around on trips with me. Well, by the time she was about 13, she had this mountain bike with fancy gears. I didn't even know how to shift, and she was much better than I was. So I think of Access with JET as the training wheel, Access with our tools then as moving on and having this industrial strength database with all the fancy gears and whistles and things. So let's take a look at Access. Now, as I said, one of the biggest problems is discovering that there's a SQL backend at all. So I'll take you through the process of doing it. I have to write it down in a book, and if I've been away from about 2 or 3 weeks, I have to go and read my book again to figure out how to do it. So you do Access Database Wizards, Pages, and Projects. So I'm going to create a new project. I go under General. I go under Project Existing Database. I have to give it a name. I'm going to connect to pubs, so I'll call it My Pubs Project. Excuse me. So now I have to, I'm going to use the SQL Server that's actually on this laptop. I could connect to another one somewhere. The one on this laptop is called VSDB 1111. I'm going to use integrated security. I can select the various databases, so there's pubs. I can test the connection. It worked okay. So I'm going to say okay. Now, here's Access's version of the Explorer. It looks quite different than the one in Visual Studio, but there's the same kinds of things. So databases, let's take a look at what's under databases. Well, there's my important diagram I just designed. So, and it's warning me about this full text indexing again. But this is the diagram I just created using Visual Studio available to me in Access. That's the really nice, I find that's really nice, that I can use any of these tools to create something and then get at it with the other ones. So that's good. I can I think now what I'll do is I'll go and design an Access form and create a form and design view. Where's my toolbars? Oh, rats. I'm looking for my toolbars. View, thank you. Toolbox, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to put a text field on here. Oops, I didn't quite put it on there. Text box. I'm going to call this state. What I'm going to do is look up all the authors in a state and have a little form for doing that. So let's go, that's not where I want to type that. I'll type it here. I'll call that state. I'm going to go ahead and put a command that lets me finish this thing. So let's sort of drag a command onto here. I'm going to make it an application type command, and it's going to be the one that I use to quit the application. I'll call it finish. I like the stop sign. I'll call this finish as well. So there it is. Well, I didn't get the stop sign. Oh well. Now I'm going to put a list box on here. This is where the good stuff happens. Now this is the list box where I'm going to list all the authors. And I get a wizard that helps me do that. And yes, I want the list box to look up values in a table. It's going to be from the author table. Let's have the last name, first name first, last name next. So what I've got here is, let's look at the properties. Look at the row source here. I've got a select statement which got generated. Now, that was kind of a not too exciting kind of select statement which gets generated by default. But the wizard doesn't let you do sophisticated things. But I can go into the query analyzer now. Not the query analyzer, sorry. Query builder. And I can actually now create a more interesting query. And I'm going to select tables in a slightly different way here. I have a list of all the tables. I'm going to bring in the author and titles and title author, as I did before. Let's also add the state. And the title. And down here under state, let's do a criteria. So we only want to select authors who are in a certain state. And this will prompt for that state. This, when I run the query, let's not show the state as output. And let's actually run this query now. And it's prompting me for the state, so I'm going to type in Washington. It turns out my database doesn't have anybody in Washington State. So let's cancel out of that. Let's go back to Design View, run it again. This time I'll go with California, and there we go. Now there's some more steps required to actually go into the background and hook this in with the state. I'm not going to show those steps. I just illustrating basically how the query ties in here. You actually have to do some other steps to actually hook it in. So I'm going to get out of access for now. I'm going to save my form. Whoops, okay. What's going on? Well, while that's happening, I'm going to go back to back to here and move on to SQL Server 7. And with SQL Server 7, the things you could do, you could visually design databases, visually design views, and visually design select, insert, update, delete, and make table. With SQL Server 2000, what's happening? Well, we're now supporting most of the new functionality of SQL Server 2000. So SQL variant and big int, indexed views, cascade referential integrity, user-defined functions, and as well as these capabilities, we are doing our own kinds of changes, so we're making the tool better itself. So we've done a lot of work with property pages to make them better and the table designers better. I'd like to just demonstrate us working with SQL Server here, 2000. I have to switch laptops, bear with me. And this is I've got 3 mice up here now. So I'm in the Enterprise Manager. And I'm going to do a new database diagram here. So let's expand. I've got a database here called Pubs Plus that has a lot of the new features that are in SQL Server. Do a new database diagram. And there's a wizard now for creating a database diagram. One of the things I kind of like about this wizard is I can pick a table, and I can actually add the related tables automatically. And I can even go down. I can say how many levels down I'd like to go. So let's add the sales table and go down 2 levels. There it goes. And then we carry on, finish. It's going to construct the table for me. Eventually. There it is. And what I have here is the sales and the 2 tables that were directly related to sales, stores with all the tables related to it, and titles with all the tables directly related to it. That's a nice way of doing things. Now, one of the new features available in SQL Server 2000 is cascade referential integrity. So I'm going to take a look at this relationship here and probably see what I can do about putting cascade referential integrity on here. So I'm going to select this line and show the properties. And this shows the properties of the table, this table here, and including this particular relationship between this table and the titles table. And you'll notice here a couple of additional boxes, cascade update related fields and cascade delete related fields. So it's a simple matter of ticking those boxes and closing it, and that relationship is now going to be enforced on that particular database will cascade all the changes and deletes down from titles to this other table. Now, one of the features that I quite like in SQL Server 2000, and I think a lot of vendors are going to like, is the ability to extend properties, metadata properties. So any object you have in your database, you can tailor it and say, okay, that's fine. There's all these standard properties, but I'd like to add some. And we ourselves have done that. So we in Visual Data Tools, for instance, have added a description property to all tables. So we look under properties here. You'll see here a description column we've added where you can describe the table. And we've gone through, and here's a description of this table. This table is used to record the bounds of the royalty to be paid to authors. The royalty is the percentage in the royalty column of sales can be no less than the value in the high range column and no more than the value in the low range column. Well, that's kind of backwards. It should be no less than the value in the low range column and no more. So I can go in and change that than the value in the high range column. And that will save that. Now, they can do a lot more than just that. We've got probably, in particular, we probably added in the office environment upwards of 30 properties, which is kind of consistent with what is done with Access and JET. Another thing we've got, the properties again, is there's all these different properties. And one thing I like is we've got these property pages, and we can just scroll down and look at all the various properties on the columns of the table, getting more information than you could get with the other views I showed you. So that's another capability. And sometimes this doesn't work as fast as I'd like it to. Wow. I don't know what's going on here. I'm trying to close it. I may have just got myself into a loop or something. Well, I'm sorry. I'm getting towards the end anyway. I apologize about that. I really do seem to be in a loop here. So let's move back to, again, there's lots more demos. People can see me, and I'll get them working for them. Okay. So I didn't demonstrate the view. I was going to demonstrate the view designer with an index view, which is a new capability in SQL Server. I was going to show this ability to go in and do something like create a select statement. Once you've got a select statement, you can automatically. Whoops. It's all happening. I don't even know where the thing is. All right, can you hear me now? Great, sorry about that. The other thing is that I was just saying I was going to go in, you can go in and create a select statement and then morph it into an update or an insert or delete. It's kind of neat the way that works. You retain the predicate and everything. I was going to show you the way we use this stuff with for instance, full text support. Anyway, you can see me later and I'll show you how that works. Now in summary, visual tools are well integrated into 3 hosts. I really do believe they do a good job in making the SQL better. We are very much in tune with what's going on in SQL Server and keeping up with what they've got. We issue requirements. It works both ways. We tell them what they want. They tell us what we want. We're also involved very much with Access and Visual Studio enhancements, and we're always improving and extending the tools. What's next? Well, in particular, we are looking to have people use and comment upon our tools in SQL Server Beta 2. If you want to use it in Visual Studio and Access, you've got to use the existing product. But we are working on a Visual Studio 7 Beta 1. And I'm soliciting right now anyone who would like to sign up for that Beta 1 program. If you can contact me, my email's on the front of this presentation. And I can take your name or see me later in this session. And I'll try to see about getting your name, getting your company name, discussing what you would like to do with Visual Studio Beta 1. And we'll see if we can get you signed up for the Beta 1 program. In the future, there's going to be an Office 10 beta program. And kind of keep your eyes peeled for that. Now these names, Visual Studio 7 and Office 10, I don't know if those are the names that are going to go out when the product actually releases, but they're in the next version of those two products that I'm using. All right. I guess we have a little time left for questions. I think you're supposed to use the mics, but you can speak loud. You can do it without the mic. Yes.